Um, First off, I wanted to thank you for agreeing to talk to me. I was really excited that you agreed.
Oh, my pleasure.
Well, first off, my name is...
Two things I don't want to talk about. Anything having to do with Star Wars or Masters of the Universe, but everything else is okay.
Okay. I'm going to be speaking with Transformers today, if that's all right with you.
Okay, it's fine.
So the Transformers, like the original cartoon, was probably the first cartoon I watched with my mom, and...
Really? Huh.
She was, she grew up in like the 80s, so whenever we wanted to watch a cartoon, she'd be like, we're not watching that new stuff, we're going to watch stuff I watched when I was younger. I do have a couple questions. So what made you decide to work on Transformers? I know that you've stated before that it was primarily a financial decision, but were there any other projects to choose from that you could have done instead?
Well, in those days, I made my living pretty much writing cartoons, and you have to write as many as you possibly could to survive. And the opportunity came my way. Bryce Malik, who was one of the story editors on the show, I'd worked with him at Hanna-Barbera. And so when he got the Transformers gig over at Marvel, he knew what my work was like. He knew what I could do, and so he just called me up and said, "Do you want to work on it?" And the opportunity was there to make quite a bit of money because there were a lot of episodes to do. I think it was a syndicated show, so instead of just like a dozen or so episodes, there was like a lot of episodes to write, and so I wrote as many of them as I could.
What was the pay like back then in comparison to now?
It was a lot higher then. I think now it's like, maybe $1,000 or something. I think back then it was something like around $4,000 per script. And then when Sunbow took it over from Marvel, I think it went up to like $7,000 or $8,000 a script. So the money was really good, considering the amount of time it took to write one of those. I used to write one of those in a day on a typewriter. This is in the days, you being 19 probably never saw a typewriter, but this is before we had computers. And if you made a mistake, you had to correct it with either retype the page or use liquid paper or something. And so it was more difficult to write on a typewriter than it was on a computer.
I had no idea that there was such a big difference between then and now. I mean, I know entertainment's a really big industry now, so I think they'd pay you more.
Well, the thing is now, with computers and word processors and everything, if you make a mistake, it's easy to correct it. Before you send it in, you just correct it, and you can be more of a perfectionist with a computer because it's not difficult to do. It's not time consuming. It's not a hard thing to do. Whereas with a typewriter, if you made a mistake or you wanted to change something or make something a little better, you would have to retype the whole page. And or, as I said, use liquid paper or something like that, and it just got to be too much work. So you let a lot of things get by that might not have been as good as they could have been. So your opportunities of doing a better job came with the advent of the computers, the home computers.
So if you were a college student now, would you have gotten into the industry still, or would you have picked a different career path?
Well, to be honest with you, I never started out. What I do now is I do a lot of things. I'm a writer, I'm a film director, I'm a producer, I'm a paleontologist. I do all kinds of things that I like to do. But I didn't start out to do any of those things. When I was a teenager, in the writing, even to my early 20s, what I really wanted to do more than anything was be a rock star. And I played in all kinds of bands and things, and almost made it once. So that's really what I really wanted to do. And when that kind of ended, I had to find something else to do. And I had various abilities. I was a pretty good writer, a pretty good artist, and some opportunities came my way. So I went from the music business directly into writing, mostly articles for monster movie magazines, and that kind of went into comic books from there, and from comic books I went into TV animation. And so it was like a gradual evolution or progression from one thing to the next.
I know that a lot of people say that, life doesn't go the way you plan it to, and so, a lot of my professors were like, I majored in communications, and now I'm doing something completely opposite. So it's kind of cool to see that hasn't really changed. You start out one thing and do another.
It was more like what I didn't want to do than what I did do. I didn't want to have a regular kind of a normal job, what they call a real job, I guess, where for the rest of my life I would be doing something I probably didn't want to do, working for somebody I probably didn't like or respect, and doing that, 5 or 6 days a week from 9 to 5. I just couldn't see myself doing that. And I loved I had hobbies, but I don't have any hobbies now because my hobbies have all turned into professions and businesses and things. But when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I put out fanzines, I made amateur movies, I played in garage bands, all these things that I had fun doing. I wrote stories, I drew pictures, and when I got into the real world, I was luckily able to make money off of all those things. And the thing is, the problem with a lot of people in my family, friends that I grew up with, they have talents for writing or artwork or acting or whatever it would be, but they don't understand that can be their day job. They look at it as a hobby or as a sideline or something, and they'll take a job doing something that they don't like working in a store or whatever, I never bought that. I wanted to do what I enjoyed doing. I wanted to basically be playing and getting paid for it, and I've been able to do that over the years. And never give up, even when times are really lean, like this crisis we're going through now. You just never give up. You just hang in there and keep pursuing it. And luckily, I've been able to do that, and make that's become my life's work.
It's really cool to hear someone actually manage to, reach their dreams and do what they love to do in life, because I know that a lot of people don't get to do that. So that's really amazing.
Well, a lot of them get to do it, but they're not willing to take the risk because somebody older than them has told them, if you don't settle down and get married and have a family and get a steady job, you're going to be alone someday and without any money, and they don't want to take the risk. And the people that take the risks are the ones that really become successful. And I have a friend in Las Vegas who's got a talent agency, and he's a big risk taker. But he's done a lot of other things too. He had a company in Chicago that repaired VCRs and all kinds of things. And he said about 80% of the businesses he's tried to start have bombed out, have failed. But 20 or 30% have hit a home run, and those home runs way outweigh the ones that have failed. And the people I know that are happiest are the ones that followed their dreams and took it and used took their own talents, their own abilities that they were born with, and turned them into businesses.
So I know that you said before that the episodes you worked on back in the 80s were just half-hour commercials. If you could rewrite those episodes, would you make any changes?
No, I don't even really, I wrote so many of those, and I wrote them so fast, I don't really remember most of them. I got the DVD sets, and I watched the ones I wrote, and I have no idea what's going on in most of them. I mean, they're just, all these characters. I don't know who the characters are anymore, and so there's nothing I would really change. We were told the term they used was push product. That meant that we would get they go ahead to write a script, and they say, well, these are the toys we're pushing in this episode. So, emphasize these characters, and you would have to write your script around those characters. And sometimes that was easy, sometimes that was difficult. I did a G.I. Joe where there was they wanted me to push a character who was a skier, snow skier or something. And the episode took place in a desert. And I didn't know I did figure it out, but how do you work this guy who's on skis into a desert story? One thing I've always been good at is problem solving. And when there's like a challenge like that, I come up with a solution, and that's always been kind of easy for me. We were, we knew there were half-hour commercials to sell toys, and we just did it. We just wrote the scripts accordingly.
Did you ever expect Transformers to turn into like $1 million franchise it is today? Do you think it would last this long?
No, I thought it was a silly idea to begin with, and so I thought the animation was pretty awful. The dialogue and everything was kind of cliche, characters shouting at each other, typical Saturday morning cartoon stuff. So I never thought it was going to take off. I was writing at the time 2 other shows that were similar. One was GoBots, and one was Mighty Orbots. And sometimes I would get the characters mixed up. I would accidentally call a character in one franchise the name of a character from another, and so that got a little confusing at times. But I never thought it was kind of like a Japanese concept. It was based on these Japanese toys. In Japan, there were a lot of cartoon shows and live-action shows where robots turned into different things, and giant robots had all these powers and abilities and things. But I never thought it would really catch on here. I was really amazed when they started making movies because I just didn't think it had that kind of a power behind it. But anyway, obviously I was wrong.
Which franchise that you've worked on is your favorite? What do you consider to be your best work?
I've written a lot of Saturday morning cartoons, if you're talking about cartoons. And most of them I thought were at best mediocre because we were writing to lowest common denominator. If you came up with anything that was really creative or unusual, you weren't going to get the gig. And I found that out when I tried doing things that were a little bit special or a little bit different, and then the story editor would tell me, oh, this is the best script we ever read, this is really great. Well, I found out when they told you that, you weren't going to get another one, because they didn't want anything that was better or anything that stood out. They all had to be the same. But there were a few, there was a Spider-Man show that was a continuation. The Spider-Man show that was done in the 60s, that I think Ralph Bakshi did it. Remember the one that had the song Spider-Man, Spider-Man, da-da-da-da-da. Anyway, they needed more episodes of that for syndication. So Marvel Productions, which was just starting up, needed to get writers that could fill in those gaps. So I wrote 4 of those, and I'm sort of proud of at least a couple of them because we weren't restricted by the network censors. Almost all Saturday morning network shows, you were really writing not for the kids, you're really writing for the something out that you put in that was, which they thought was offensive in some way. But these Spider-Man cartoons were syndicated, so we didn't have the censorship problem. And I did a show for them an episode called The Capture of Captain America, and they had the Red Skull, and it was one of my better shows. I did a DuckTales for Disney that I think was one of my better shows, and I also did a RoboCop for Marvel that I think was one of my better shows. So I think those are my three episodes of Saturday morning cartoon shows that I would put some pride into. See, to me, almost just about all those Saturday morning shows were just done for the money. There was nothing really special about them. They were just, you had to follow the rules. They all had to be the same. So I don't know if that answers your question, but those are the three. The one or two I did for the Spider-Man show, and then the DuckTales episode I did, and the RoboCop episode that I did. And those were, I had a little bit more freedom in those three shows than I did in your typical Saturday, like Hanna-Barbera or Filmation or one of those.
So I know a lot of those cartoons were basically toy sellers, but a lot of those cartoons have been brought back either for, just to become popular again, or people are feeling a lot of nostalgia for the 80s and 90s. What do you think about that?
Well, it's I'm way older than you, so my nostalgia goes back to like the 1950s, the 1960s. I find myself, especially during this pandemic and trying to find things to fill up time, watching a lot of things on MeTV like Perry Mason and Alfred Hitchcock Hour and Twilight Zone and these things. So it's a perfectly natural thing for people to be nostalgic about things. You're too young to be nostalgic about it because you weren't around back then. But you said your mom is, and I can understand that, certainly.
Do you think that if people are viewing older cartoons like Transformers as better than they were because of the nostalgia?
Well, yeah, I think, some people look back and they're not quite the same as they remember them, and sometimes they're better than they remember, hey, this is really good, and sometimes they're not so good. Oh, gee, why did I ever like this show, And for a lot of people, they never saw those shows when they were first time. And, now everything, all the animation, you see, is computer. Like these Pixar movies and things, and they all look the same. They look, in the old days, really old days, long before I was born, but, I can relate to them because I saw them in reruns and reissues. You look at an animation movie like Dumbo or Bambi or Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. They all look different. The visual style was different in every one of those movies. Now every one of these animation movies look exactly the same, and the characters look like they're made out of rubber. And they're all these celebrity voices where they're all saying these quick lines, real quick cuts. There's no difference. There's no artistry anymore. And I forgot what I was trying to make a point here. I forgot where I was going with it. But anyway, I think when the people see the old cartoons and they see there's actually some craftsmanship that have gone into it. It's just not somebody sitting behind a computer tapping away. It's like with movies. When I was a kid, you would sit there in a movie theater with your friend watching some really mediocre or sometimes awful science fiction movie, and you would say, when the special effects come on, you would say, gee, how did they ever do that? I wonder how they did that. And now nobody says it anymore because you know how they did it. It's some guy, some geek behind a computer keyboard tapping away, and they're all the same. All the the special effects look exactly alike. And it's something we've lost, I think. The fact that things look different and they had a certain personal touch to them, which you don't see anymore.
I really agree with that. I feel like pretty much anything older has more heart to it. A lot of the real effects, like the T-Rex in Jurassic Park or the Alien in the Alien, and all those things look much more real than the new Transformers movies and stuff like that, because the CGI just isn't the same.
No, and everything moves so fast you can't even really tell what's going on. You know, there's what they call sensory overkill. There's like an assault on the senses. And you don't even, I mean, these Marvel movies, I usually love the first two-thirds, and then the last third is nothing but CGI effects, and you don't even know what you're looking at anymore. There's just so much going on.
With the last Avengers movie, I know they filmed it with the actors and just in green screens. They didn't know where they were, what the context was. They weren't even in the same room as the other actors. It's crazy.
Yeah, you almost don't need actors anymore. Just put the CGI effects in.
I've got one more question regarding the Transformers franchise. Do you keep up with it? Did you see the modern movies, any of the modern cartoons? And if so, do you like any of them?
No, I have not seen any since the ones I wrote. And the last one I wrote, the majority of them, all except one, I wrote for Marvel Productions. And but there was one, but then Sunbow took it over. And Sunbow was a company that was doing G.I. Joe, and it was very difficult to get on any of the Sunbow shows because they had their own set of writers. And there was sort of an arrogance among a lot of those people, like, hey, we're better than, the people working at Marvel, and when they were getting paid a lot more money. But I was able to get one episode written and sold for the Sunbow version of Transformers, and that was Call of the Primitives. And the story editor, Clint Dilley, kind of told me what he wanted in the story, and I had really no idea what he was talking about. But I wrote the story, and apparently with Transformers fans, I've heard from fans saying this was a important episode, and yada, yada, yada. And I watched it when it came out on DVD, and I had no idea what was going on, even though I wrote it. So I haven't followed anything. I did see the first couple of movies, but I didn't like them. They were just, just too much sensory overkill, too much special effects, too much whatever.
A lot of Transformers fans agree with you there. The live-action movies are not one of the favorites at all.
Yeah. And I don't know, are they making another one, or where are they with that now?
They made about 8 movies, I believe, and they are done.
8 movies? I only know of 2 of them.
The last one came out about 2 years ago, and it started pandering to the Chinese market more than the American one. So, it doesn't make much sense even when you're watching it in theaters now.
Yeah. Huh. 8 of them. I had no idea. It's a big surprise to me. But somebody must like them if they made 8 of them. Where are you located? Where do you live?
In Georgia.
Georgia. Okay. And you're in college now?
Yep. I'm a sophomore.
And what are you majoring in?
Psychology, and I'm minoring in writing. I took a screenwriting course last semester that I really liked.
Oh, great. Well, one of the important things to keep in mind if you want to be a writer is try to write something every day, even if it's only a letter or something, just to keep your writing muscle working, And another important thing is probably when you're first starting, I don't know if you've sold anything yet or if you've submitted anything yet, but probably when you're starting out, you're going to get rejections, and don't let them affect you in any way, because you can get rejected for reasons that have nothing to do with your talent as a writer or your self-worth as a person. I learned a couple tricks back when I was in the comic book business. I was at a party in New York, and the party was put on by a writer friend of mine who was a comic book writer, DC and Marvel, and everybody there was in the business. And I met a guy named Denny O'Neil, who was an editor at DC Comics, and we struck up a conversation. And he said, "Well, why don't you come down and see me in the office Monday morning? We'll see what you got." So Monday morning, bright and early, I went over to DC Comics with some scripts in my hand, and we went into his office, and on his desk was a pile of manila envelopes that were stacked up there. And he said, "You know what those are?" And I said, "Well, probably submissions of people sending in scripts." He said, "These came in just over the weekend. I don't have time to read all this stuff." He gave them to his secretary and said, "Send these back, unopened, unread." And then he said to me, "What did you bring me?" And I handed him some scripts, and he bought them. So I found out that the personal contacts you can make are so important. You know, what they call networking today are so important. And if you're sending things through the mail, try not to let them arrive on Friday or a Monday, because if they arrive on a Friday, this is all psychology. This is going to tie into with your psychology. If they arrive on a Friday, the editor or the publisher or whoever it is who's going to buy them is probably thinking about going home for the weekend, and he's not going to give it a fair read. And if they come in on a Monday, well, he's just had a weekend, so probably he or she is not going to be, giving it their best. Anything that comes in over the weekend, so try to get your material in their hands either on anywhere from Tuesday through Thursday. So that was just a little trick I learned years and years and years ago, and it's always worked for me. But don't give up. The important thing is don't give up, because it's going to be lean at first. It's going to be slow going at first. But once you get your name out there and you get some professional credits, it becomes very, very a lot easier. Nowadays, when I started writing, you could just send a manuscript off to a producer or publisher or an editor, and they would read it, and you would get a reply back. Maybe they'd buy it, maybe they'd reject it. But nowadays, I think you need an agent to do it, because everybody's afraid of getting sued. So it has come into an agent, and getting an agent is kind of difficult. I don't have an agent right now, and I've never had really good luck with agents, but I've always had good luck on my own, promoting myself. And I promote myself on Facebook and all kinds of places, But never give up, because sooner or later that pendulum's going to swing back the other way in your favor, And a lot of people give up. They write a novel and it gets rejected because it might not be very good, and then they get all bent out of shape and they never write anything again. And I've seen so many budding careers, just go to waste like that, just die before they ever really get started. So, that's another thing. Write every day if you can, and don't give up.
Thank you for the advice. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Are you? What is this for? Are you writing a paper or something, a term paper, or?
I'm producing a podcast.
The podcast. Okay.
I'm just really passionate about Transformers, and I figure, I'm on winter break right now, and I thought it'd be a fun project to work on, and as it's also going to work for an extra credit assignment next semester when I have my next writing.
Oh, good. Oh, good luck with it.
Do you want me to send you the podcast when it gets published?
Yeah, please do.
All right, I'll make sure I do that, and thank you so much for agreeing to speak with me. I didn't think you were going to respond, to be honest.
Well, especially in these days, because there's, when you're stuck at home, you got to find things to do to fill up the time. So I have no problem with this at all. And you seem very smart and asked some good questions, and it was nice talking to you too. So.
All right, well, I've had you for 30 minutes, so I'll go ahead and let you go. But again, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for speaking with me.
Okay, thank you for calling.
All right, bye-bye.